All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. This is the quarter one meeting for fiscal year 2026, the October 27th meeting of the State Advisory Council on Educational Opportunity for Military Children. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a packed agenda today. It looks relatively light, but we have several topics to address. So I'm going to start just reviewing our full agenda for today's meeting, and then we'll jump into our roll call. I'm not sure that we're at a quorum. I do not anticipate any action items today. This meeting is being recorded, though, so we will share that with any members who were not able to attend. So we will have a call to order and roll call in just a moment. Just a standing roll review, the public comments requirement. We have new members some to introduce today and some to let you know we will be introducing very soon. Not all able to join us today, but we'll share a little bit of their information with you and then meet them at a future meeting. And then we have a military compact training. Lindsay Dablo from the national headquarters in Lexington for the Military Interstate Compact is here to provide us with an overview training of the military compact. There are more detailed and longer trainings available. They also have some new trainings that they have developed for those who have attended training in the past and might need a refresher. So hopefully she'll be sharing some information about those as well that we can share and push out into the field. But I asked her to do an overview for the council today. It's been a couple of years since we've had a presentation, and we have some new members. So looking forward to that update. Next, we will move on to council priorities. The council has had a kind of a procedure of reviewing its priorities for each fiscal year. We had some discussion in previous meetings. I would like to, in this meeting, kind of hone in and focus on some of the things that have been discussed, and then have some different planning documents that I'd like to share with the council so that we can kind of organize those priorities and revisit them in between meetings for updates. So excited to kind of share some of those graphic organizers and planning documents for your consideration for future use. Then we have council member and staff reports. I'll provide an update from the annual business meeting. Dr. Lay, one of our council members, will also be providing an update from TEA, but a different division than my division, which Dr. Lay serves in the highly mobile at-risk populations unit, which also provides direct support for military connected families and students. So she will be providing an update. And then, as always, we will have time for any other council members who have updates or reports that they would like to share. We'll go over upcoming events between now and our next meeting, and then we will adjourn. So first, I'll start with our call to order. It's a reminder to take yourself off mute for this section. And starting with roll call, Dr. John Kraft. Jessica Garza. Brenda Howard. Brenda, you're on mute.
Unmute. Oh, sorry. Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Hutzutler.
I'm here.
Thank you. Jeanette Gomez, here as a designee for new member, Colonel Ju.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Lay.
Present.
Nancy Patterson.
Here.
Dr. Roper. I am Jessica Snyder, the MIC3 Commissioner Designee from TEA. Let the record show I am present. Simone Wendland Hendricks.
Present.
Madison Yandel. Technical Sergeant Zepeda. And then we have 3 vacant positions listed. Just as a reminder to the council, particularly when we have action items or items requiring a vote, if you are unable to attend a meeting, you always have the option of identifying a proxy to attend in your place. Whether you will be identifying a proxy or you're simply unable to attend, if you can let me know in advance, that can also help me identify what items we might want to save until you're able to attend, and to ensure we have a quorum, et cetera. So please let me know. Certainly understand that folks sometimes have conflicts that come up, but if you can let us know, that will help us with our planning. Thank you. All right, this is just a standing item for public comments. We are an open meeting. We have a physical address where people are able to come in and attend should they wish to do so. And we also share the Zoom link for this meeting, and the meeting is recorded and posted. And aligned with that open meeting notice, we post some guidelines for the public comments as a part of the open meeting notice that we post 10 days, calendar days prior to the actual meeting. We would hear any testimony should anyone wish to register for testimony. We did not receive any public comments or requests to provide testimony, so we will move on. I am pausing for a moment. Yes, there is I was looking for my recording button as I said that to make sure that I was in fact recording the meeting, and I am. So excited. While we do not have all of our new members with us to introduce themselves today, I can at least introduce their names to you, and I do have one member here who will ask to introduce herself, but we have identified 3 additional council members since our last meeting. It was one of our priorities was to fill vacancies on the council. I would like to go through the list first. We have Brenda Howard, who will be joining us, and she is with us, and we'll have her introduce herself in just a moment. She is filling the position, which is the designee of the chair of the House of Representatives from the Committee on Public Education. So this is one of our legislative, one of our positions that is identified from the legislature, from the House. And so we're thrilled to have her join the committee, and I'll let her introduce herself in just a moment. But just to go through the rest of the list, I said 3, we actually have 4, but I'll explain why. How our 4th member is a little bit different. Next, we have Colonel Peter Jew. He is absent. He has a designee attending, taking notes for him today, Jeanette Gomez. So thank you again, Jeanette, for being with us. We will let Colonel Jew introduce himself at a future meeting. He is in Japan, and I'm sure who knows what time it is right there right now, but unable to attend, but we look forward to formally welcoming him to the council in our next meeting. We also have Technical Sergeant Nolan Cepeda. He will be serving as our ex officio representative for the reserves component of the U.S. Armed Forces. This is a position that the council recently voted to add to the membership, and we received his appointment through the National Office for the Air Force. So we were through a national office, so we were excited to be able to add him to our membership. And the reason why our 4th member is a little bit different is because Dr. Inlay has been attending and presenting in our meetings, but we have been able to formally extend an offer to serve on the council to her. We had some restructuring. We currently had a position at TEA listed that no longer existed, and we just needed to make some adjustments to our operating procedures to be a little bit more expansive, that we would have a member from the other division I mentioned, not mine, but another division here at TEA that supports military connected students, which is our highly mobile at-risk unit, which Dr. Lay serves on. And so with that adjustment, we're able to fill that position, that vacancy. And so also thrilled to welcome her. But let's go back to the top. And Brenda is with us today. And Brenda, if you could come off mute, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you think you came to join a council that supports our military connected students.
Thank you so much. And just to let you know, I'm completely honored. This is a joy for me. I am a military brat, so I traveled the world and I went to all the military schools. I was active duty military myself, so former Sergeant Howard. And then I married military, so I had a son in the military. So I have all of the military experience, and by degree, I'm a paralegal. and I became interested in education when we moved to Texas 7 years ago. And I've been working on policy, pretty much education policy ever since. So Chairman Buckley and I have worked closely together with regard to legislation and education in the state of Texas. So I'm pretty sure that that entire combination is how I ended up here. So, but it is an honor. I'm excited about it. And we are where we're from, Belton, in our House district, is right next to Fort Hood. And so there's a military base right there. So it's quite a perfect combination.
Well, that is good to know, the proximity as well, your experience, which we will welcome in our remote council meetings, but it's also good to know your proximity should we need anyone to knock on doors.
Right.
Back to
Right.
that and just more about that in just a moment. But welcome, Brenda. We appreciate your joining us this afternoon and in advance for your in retrospect and in advance for your service
Thank
as a
you.
council member. Dr. Lay, I know you have presented to this group before, but thought you might say just a couple of words about your unit and the work that you do as a new council member.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I serve as the manager of the highly mobile at-risk student programs, and I lead the military connected programs unit. And what we do is connect our families and our students to resources and support systems that can help to elevate their student success academically and non-academically. And we've been working with our grantee, the MSEC, and providing a suite of professional development. We've got resources that are coming out the wazoo this year, and being represented at summits nationally and helping for Texas to be recognized as a national leader in our military connected work. So just super excited to be in this space and very honored to work alongside everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Lay. I'm particularly excited about this collaboration while we have been collaborating up to date, formalizing that collaboration with council membership as well. I think will really benefit the council and its work and priorities. So myself as the commissioner designee for the Military Interstate Compact, I serve the role for our state and the commission. Each state as well as the District of Columbia has a representative. So I attend the annual business meeting and am responsible for staffing and supporting the council. My other day job here at TEA, I mentioned a different division or department, is the Curriculum Standards and Student Support Unit. And our unit supports the curriculum standards and other curriculum related policies under the State Board of Education and the Commissioner, and that includes our graduation requirements, award of credit, transfer of credit, and transcript requirements. And so that's the piece of the compact that I support. But all of those resources, stakeholder engagement, and tools that Dr. Lay and direct support as well as coordination with the school liaison officers is a critical piece. When you put them together, I feel like you have the whole puzzle. And so looking forward to continuing to work with her to serve this population in this council. So this next slide is just wanting to show the progress that we've made in terms of the positions that we filled, but just highlighting for you the positions that remain unfilled. And then would like to have a little bit of discussion. I'm going to jump to the middle where you see the chair of the Senate Committee on Education. So we have two legislative appointed positions from the House and one from the Senate. Brenda Howard has stepped in as a representative selected from the House. We have been in contact with the Committee for Education on the Senate side. You may or may not be aware, Senator Creighton has submitted his resignation from the Senate. He has been appointed as the chancellor for Texas Tech University. Fortunately, he had plans in place to fill our vacancy before stepping down and into his new role, stepping down from the Senate and into his new role. So we expect that we may have that position filled as soon as our next meeting. So good news and progress there. We have the other two positions we have vacant are a second ex officio position and the parent representative. Our previous parent representative, her term had ended and she is no longer, she was actually also a school district employee, but her term had also ended. I am not sure how the parent designee was identified in the past. That was prior to my joining the council. And so I wasn't really sure how to go about filling that position. And so I'd like to ask the council, one, if you either have any recollection of how the position has been, the individual for that position has been identified in the past, and or have any recommendations about how we might identify an individual to fill the parent representative role. So this is a discussion item. Opening the floor.
Jessica, this is Nancy. I do not have any recollection of how parent representatives were selected in the past, but I am happy to support or even try to find parent representatives to bring forward to the committee for consideration.
Great. I think that's so the form of a recommendation that council members can use their networks to identify, potentially identify a parent or a recommendation. So I could extend that to all. What we've done in the past when it's kind of been an open call is we've asked either the council members or the entity we've reached out to provide those recommendations to us, and then we'll contact them and request a resume. In the past, the council has seemed to approve that once we have those nominations, that TEA can make that selection. And so I might ask the council members who are here if there's any objection once we have a pool of candidates with TEA reviewing those resumes and making that selection. Are there any objections to that process? Okay.
I think that sounds great.
Okay, so council members could make recommendations. Any other recommendations for how we might pursue or identify interested candidates?
I agree with the recommendation from all the other committee members because it would be someone who you're working with who is already interested and has some buy-in, if you will, regarding the issue. So I agree that whoever's on this committee is probably tied into a parent somewhere that would be interested in serving. So that's my thought.
Simone, I'm wondering if we might check in with some of the school liaisons and their contacts, or would you prefer the sticking with the council as a starting place?
I'm so sorry. I have issues with my. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. That was my recommendation that maybe we can ask the Texas Lows since we work with parents. Now, a parent that is interested would have to submit an application, or.
We typically just ask for a resume. What I would ask is that council members, whether it's Simone, in your case, you might be asking the SLOs if they have a recommendation, or council members who have their own individual contacts. If you will provide me with their name and contact information, then we will reach out. We'll provide the individual with an explanation of the commitment, a little bit of background on and then a request for their resume. So why don't we go that route and ask for council members to submit recommendations for individuals. So Simone, I would say if you have an SLO who wants to recommend a parent, if you could actually be the sponsoring council member and submit that individual or individuals to me by email, let's say by December 1st. That would give us time to reach out, review applications, and potentially have someone join us by our January meeting. So we'll include that in our follow-up communication, that deadline and that request. We'll include it in the minutes and in the follow-up communication you receive after this meeting. That would be great. I appreciate the council support. in filling that position. The second position that is still vacant is the ex officio position that the council recently approved, a representative from the Texas National Guard. And so I thought there are two things we could do here. Well, one, we did what the council recommended for the two ex officio positions was that we draft a letter for the installation commanders, which we did. We were very fortunate. One of those communications was escalated to the national office, and we received the appointment directly from a national office for the Air Force. And I apologize, I don't know exactly the way that they depict that office. I'm still learning terminology, but we received Technical Sergeant Zepeda's appointment through that strategy. But overall, we got a very limited response. And so we were not able to identify a National Guard representative. The two thoughts that I had was we can open that up for discussion as well if there are other ideas or follow-up that council members would recommend. The second option would require an amendment to operating rules, and I'm not sure that this is appropriate, but I didn't think of it at the time when the council was discussing the two positions. And that is, I wanted to be sure that it was the intent of the council that it was and. And by and, I mean an ex officio representative from the reserves of the armed forces and an ex officio representative from the Texas National Guard. Because it could be an or, one or the other. I recognize that there are different perspectives that you would receive from the two representatives. And so I thought we might just start, and I'd like as many folks as possible to weigh in on this question, is if this is, if it is the sense that it is important to have both of those positions filled concurrently, or if it's a single position that it's one or the other.
Okay, I'll jump in there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Bo
you.
Huffstetter up here at Fort Worth. I think it'd be okay just to be an or. I think the perspective that the reserve or the guard brings to the conversation is just that they're longstanding members, typically within the same geographical areas, and that's not always the case. There's going to be probably even some guard folks that move in and out, but both of those groups can be mobilized in different ways and can go from being, part-time school teachers, pilots, mechanics, and full-time deployed, in a matter of weeks. Whereas your active duty footprint is going to be that kind of continuous, probably 2 to 3 years, and then moving in and out of Texas. And so you're going to have just a different perspective from those families that are coming from an active duty background. So I don't think it would be absolutely critical that you would have to have both a reserve and a guard representative. And I think if we continue to have somebody I'll be in this job for another year. And I know the guy who's coming in behind me has a similar background to me. We can definitely speak intelligently on reserve because we're a joint reserve base. So I think you'll end up probably with two perspectives there for both active duty, guard, and reserve. And so and then the other part is we have Texas Air National Guard, and soon we'll have Army National Guard on the base. So we can always solicit any feedback that you want from those leaders here internally, and then just bring it to the group.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Other discussion. Because this would require an adjustment to the operating rules, that would require a formal vote. And so what I propose, we can outline this discussion, this action item for the next meeting and bring it back to the committee for post it as an action item in our next agenda and bring it back to the council for a vote in January. So in the interim, we will not actively pursue filling the additional position, but depending on the action and the decision by the council in January, we will either amend the operating procedure to make that an either or or if it remains as an and, then we'll ask for additional recommendations for how we might fill that additional seat. But thank you for bringing that perspective, Colonel Huffstedler. And while we have a year, we will definitely want to talk to you about our transition plan. We kind of similarly, in filling Colonel Dalby's position, reached out to his replacement about filling that role. Again, that national office indicated that they would like to actually make the appointment directly and chose a different base. And so we'll just want to make sure that we have a transition plan in place, Colonel Huffstedler, when you transition out of your current role.
Okay, that sounds great.
Good. Thank you so much. All right. Well, that takes care of our membership update. Thanks, everyone, for chiming in. One other reminder here for new and existing members. You may or may not be aware of the open meeting training that is required as a council member. We will include this information with active links. I realize you can't click on them here, but we'll share both the presentation with you and again in our meeting minutes, this reminder that you are required to complete the Office of the Attorney General's open meeting training. And so we are asking for our new members to provide the certificate. There's a link as well that you can complete the certificate. If you are an existing member and have completed the training, we are not asking you to provide any additional verification other than we will honor if you tell that you have completed it, then we will accept that, since we didn't put this certificate requirement as a new requirement. However, if you're an existing member who has not completed the training, please do so. And then you will, there's a separate link here for generating your certificate. Our ask is that members are up to date prior to the next council meeting in January. Again, we'll include this information and this reminder in our minutes and our follow-up communication. You are also required as council members to complete the Military Interstate Compact training, the MIC3. I shorten it a bit. It is a longer title than that, so I should just say MIC3 because there are 3 C's in that title. And we are, as a courtesy to our new member who's in attendance today, we're going to include training as a part of today's council meeting. This is an overview. I mentioned there are longer, more extensive trainings that are available on the MIC3 webpage. But this is just a good opportunity for folks to kind of reorient before we dig into priorities, reorient into the provisions and purpose of the compact. And so for this, I'm going to turn things over to Lindsay Dablo from the National Headquarters Office. Lindsay, I'm going to go ahead and just turn things over to you. I believe you're sharing your own slides today. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I will stop sharing.
All right. Oh, it's making me request that I can share.
Yes, I will give you permission. Permission granted.
All right. So hopefully everyone can see my screen now. My name is Lindsay Dablo. I am the Interim Executive Director for the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission. As Commissioner Snyder said, it's a very long organizational name. We are the commission that is tasked with overseeing the Interstate Compact on educational opportunity for military children. So we didn't do ourselves any favors. We haven't shortened anything. We definitely like long titles. We are headquartered here in Lexington, Kentucky. We are part or an affiliate of the Council of State Government. So for those of you who are in education or the military, there are a lot of interstate compacts right now that are out there kind of being shopped around to legislatures to address military spouse staffing, especially in the educator realm. And so that's all coming out of the National Center for Interstate Compacts, which is also housed, I'm actually less than 5 feet away from their headquarters here at the Council of State Government. So if you're kind of wondering how we came to be in Lexington, that is the reason why. But this is our condensed Compact 101 training. So in the next 30 minutes, you're going to learn a lot of information, but you're also not going to learn as much as you could. So I'm going to go through the presentation fairly quickly, give you some examples as we go, but please know there's a lot more information to digest, and you can reach out to Commissioner Snyder to get that, or you're always welcome to contact us here at the national office or your school liaisons. They are wonderful resources for the Interstate Compact. I'm sorry, I've got so many screens here, I've lost my cursor, but there we go. So our mission here at MIC3 is through the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children to address key transition issues that are encountered by the children of military families. I'm sure most of you all have heard the statistic that on average, a military connected student will transition 6 to 9 times. So that's a different set of hurdles that child has to overcome to stay on grade level, on track to graduate. And so that's what the compact is here to address. As you can see, they're removing those barriers to educational success that are imposed upon those children because of their parents' frequent moves or deployments. And you'll see this QR code to the compact rules. So how every state becomes part of an interstate compact is they took the model compact language that we proposed and they adopted it into their law, into their statutes. So I always tell people all 50 states plus the District of Columbia belong to this compact. So no matter where you go within the continental United States, your child, as long as they're enrolled in a public school or a DODEA school, are covered by the compact. So through a memorandum of understanding, we also cover DODEA schools. But what is unique about a compact, an interstate compact, is that our rules have the force and effect of statutory law. And so we take that very seriously. We meet annually, as Commissioner Snyder said. We just got done with our 2025 annual business meeting in Indianapolis, and we did amend one of our rules. So that is an administrative rule actually that has to do with more with paying of annual dues than it has to do with anything related to children. But you definitely want to be aware of our compact rules because, again, they do have that force effect of statutory law. And I'll refer back to those here when we get into the provisions of the compact. There are two individuals that are very integral to the successful implementation of the interstate compact. The first one is the compact commissioner, which is the position that Commissioner Snyder is currently holding within the state. They are your state appointed representative, usually appointed by the governor. They're responsible for ensuring that the state establishes an MIC3 state council like the one that is meeting today, ensuring that the state and school districts comply with all MIC3 rules, bylaws, and then once again, the state statute, and assisting school liaisons, schools, and military families with any compact-related education issues that may arise that are covered by the compact. You can find these individuals on our interactive map. Our website is mic3.net. Whenever you click on your state, you'll find 2 points of contact there within that state that can assist military families. You're also going to find contact information for all the school liaisons. You will find the membership of your state council as well as your meeting minutes and agenda. So this is really a one-stop shop for the state. And then for those of you in the military on today's call, as you have families who maybe are leaving your installation, if it's a member of your staff and you want to say, hey, you're headed to Colorado, so you might look at this map and see who the school liaison is so your family can transition a little easier. It's a wonderful resource for military families to have access to. The other individual is the school liaison. So the school liaisons do not work for MIC3, but we could not successfully implement the compact within states without them. They provide their work is so important. And MIC3 is an extremely small part of what they do for military families. So you can see they are the primary point of contact for school-related matters. So we always refer families back to the school liaison, back to the compact commissioner. We want them to be in touch with those local points of contact so that they can resolve any issues quickly and efficiently for that student. They represent, inform, and assist command. So you may see these individuals at school board meetings. They're going to report back to command like, hey, these are some things to be aware of. Like maybe a area around the base is going to rezone. And so be aware that this may affect some of our family members. That's some of the information they'll share. They assist military families with school issues. So whenever a military family has a question, whether they have been at the installation for a while or they're just coming in, they can help them answer any of those questions. They coordinate with the local school system. So, on the flip side, say you have a large scale deployment coming up or something is happening and it's going to affect the families on the installation, maybe the students in those school districts, they'll communicate that back to the schools and say, hey, just be aware, you may need some more supports on campus because this is happening or you may see this coming up. So really they're about forging partnerships and building relationships. Again, you can find them on the interactive map. We also have a Find My School Liaison drop-down on mic3.net. And then, of course, if you're headed overseas, Military OneSource is where you would find the contact information for those individuals who are at overseas installations. So who does the compact apply to? So it applies to active duty members of the armed forces. That does include Space Force as well as the Coast Guard. National Guard Reserve on Title 10 orders. So Title 10 are your active duty orders. We cover those individuals. Some states have chosen through external statute language to cover other orders or, other titles like 32 or AGRs, but that's done separate from the compact. So just know you may get a family in a school district that says, oh, I was covered by the compact. But really we only cover those Title 10 National Guard and Reserve members. Uniformed members of the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, as well as the U.S. Public Health Service, are also covered by the compact. And then members or veterans who are medically discharged or retired for 1 year are covered. And then the families of service members who perish while on active duty, they are also covered again for that period of 1 year following the service member's death. And the reason why those last two groups kind of have that timeline of 1 year is because, let's say a service member retires, they tend to not live right next to the last place they were stationed, right? They're going to return to their final home of record. So this gives them a year of coverage to withdraw their student from the local school district. Maybe they're going to move back to Kentucky. That allows them to enroll their student. And then if they have to address any education issues within that year, they have the coverage to do that. After that year, let's say that family decides to move to Virginia for whatever reason, they're now moving based on choice, right? It's no longer that they're being ordered to by the military. So that's why that year gives them that chance to move during their retirement. But after that, it does fall away. And then, of course, the compact applies to the local education agency, to public and Department of Defense education activity schools or DODEA schools, and only kindergarten through 12th grade. You can see it focuses on those key educational transition issues, which we'll touch a little bit on when we get into the provisions here in about one more slide. It seeks to inform schools of the unique education challenges of transitioning military students. So we talked about that 6 to 9, transitions throughout their educational career. I meet students all the time who are in their 11th or 12th. And I think, Jessica, there was one individual on the Bloom call last week that was in 17 schools. I mean, it was some kind of astronomical amount of schools. And so this is not a student who maybe, mom and dad divorced and they go to the neighboring school district. You're going to get students that maybe have 4 or 5 different transcripts. And, maybe 2 of them are from a public schools. One is from a DODEA school and one is from an international school. And how do you reconcile all of that information to keep that student on grade level, on track to graduate? So that's why the compact exists. It allows for the uniform treatment of military students alongside their civilian peers. So uniform treatment's in bold because we're not asking for more than. We really want our military connected students to have the same opportunities that their civilian peers have that do not transition. What it doesn't do is advocate for preferential treatment. So again, uniform treatment. It does not impact curriculum, state and local education authority. So you'll see when we get into the provisions how we work within the foundation established by the school district to really address these various situations that military families encounter. It does not apply to preschool, pre-kindergarten, or provisional kindergarten. So again, coverage begins in kindergarten and lasts until 12th grade. And then it doesn't apply to private, parochial, homeschool, or international schools. However, a little caveat to this last bullet point is, sometimes a service member is stationed somewhere where there is no DODEA school for the student to attend, and they have to be in an international school. We often get asked when that family, transitions back stateside or comes back into the public school system, can the compact be used? Absolutely. You can avail yourselves of all of the provisions of the compact to assist that family. It's just while they're in that international school, we really cannot affect anything for them. So just know that once they do come back in, they do have all of the coverage afforded to them under the compact. And then why is it important? It does provide districts and schools flexibility to make accommodations within the scope of the compact. Prior to the compact, when you got a no, it was just a no. There was no recourse. And so that last bullet there, it allows states through their commissioners to converse and facilitate cases. So not only did it provide flexibility, but it gave you a point of contact, or gave military families a point of contact in each state that really can have these conversations and address these needs for military students. So now we're getting into the provisions. There is a lot of information on these next 2 slides. And so I'm going to not necessarily read all of it to you, but I am going to give you situations or some instances of how these provisions might apply. So under the first article, educational records. So this allows families to hand carry unofficial documents between the sending school and the receiving school. It allows the receiving school to use those hand carried or unofficial documents to enroll and place the student, and then reach back and request the official documentation. And you'll notice on the very kind of, if you're looking at your screen on the right-hand side at the bottom, Rules Chapter 300, Section 3.101. So if you did scan that QR code and you're looking for where this applies in the rules, we've kind of tried to help you out by putting that little cheat sheet on there. This is very helpful for students, especially because as they transition, right, sometimes students were having to sit out a couple of weeks while the receiving school waited for those official documents. This allows the family to get those hand-carried records. The receiving school can use those to enroll and place the student. And so the student is not forced to sit out and doesn't lose any time, any instructional time. Immunizations, the student has 30 days from enrollment to get any additional required immunizations. If it's a series of shots, they have to get the first shot in the series and, of course, complete the series within that 30-day time frame. What is not covered is TB testing. That is a test, not immunization. So if a negative test result is required prior to enrollment, that's allowable under the compact. And then rounding out this article of the compact, kindergarten and first grade entrance age, which I would say is one of our more widely used provisions of the compact. This allows a student or requires a student that has continued kindergarten or first grade, if previously started at an accredited school before transferring, the ability to continue. So once they've started, they've been enrolled and attending, and we do not define attendance, 1 day, 20 days. We don't give a set number of days, but we do require documentation that a student has to be able to produce to prove they were enrolled and attending in that sending school. In order for the receiving school to accept that student, enroll them back into kindergarten or first grade, regardless of their age. So again, this keeps students, like say maybe a student started in Kentucky and now they have PCS to South Carolina, but they don't meet South Carolina's kindergarten entrance age. Under this provision of the compact, the receiving school would have to honor that previous enrollment in Kentucky and allow the child to continue. It just keeps them on that trajectory once they have started. Course and educational program placement. This looks like a small provision, but actually as students get into middle school, high school transitions, this becomes more and more widely used provision. So kindergarten and first grade entrance age, and then course and educational program, two of the more widely used provisions. The receiving school must initially honor course placement and enrollment in gifted and talented, honors, AP, International Baccalaureate, honors, National Honor Society, ROTC, all of those are considered educational programs. If previously enrolled at the sending school, but the receiving school can test to ensure continued enrollment, and the receiving school is not required to create a class or additional space if a class is full. So let's say a student was in the sending school, they took algebra, they earned a grade and a credit for algebra. The receiving school, and let's say they did it in 8th grade, but on their transcript, it's noted that that course was taken for high school level credit or graduation credit. The receiving school has to honor that grade and that credit already earned and place them in the next course in the sequence. So this is an area that we get a lot of questions around. The other way this can affect military connected students is, let's say they transition mid-year, and so they were in Algebra 1. The receiving school has to honor that enrollment and place them back into that course. So it keeps students from having to repeat courses that maybe they took at the receiving school. But again, it all has to be outlined clearly on the transcript. Then gifted and talented program is normally what we get the most questions around for a student. Under this provision of the compact, if the student was enrolled in and participating in the gifted and talented program, the receiving school has to immediately upon enrollment place the student into that program, but then they can test them to ensure they meet the receiving school's requirements. A lot of times schools want to test and then place a student, but if it is a military connected student, under this provision, they have to place the student and then they can do the testing. So again, it's always placement then testing. Another unique thing to know about this provision is, let's say the student at the end of the school year tested into the gifted and talented program in the sending school, but they didn't actually attend courses. Under this provision of the compact, if that student say they PCS over the summer, the receiving school has to honor that assessment, place the student into the program, and then perform their own test. They can't look at the test scores and say, well, you may have qualified in Kentucky, but you don't qualify here in Florida. They have to honor that assessment, place the student, and then do their own testing. So just keep that in mind. Now, of course, if the school does not offer that course, they're not required then to create that course. So that's why you have that extra little bullet point there underneath. Special education services. The compact does adhere to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. What makes an interstate compact unique is that in certain areas, the ones that we're talking about or discussing right now, we supersede state rules and regulations and laws in these areas. And every state who signed onto the compact agreed to abide by them. And that's what makes us unique. So in these areas, they've given us the ability to come in and say, hey, maybe you do this for civilian students, but because it's a military connected student, you've agreed to go by this set of rules. But for special education services, because the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is federal law, that we do not supersede federal law. So we adhere to IDEA. Our language you see here will mimic what you see there. The receiving school must provide comparable services, but they're not required to provide the exact same program as the sending school. So again, they have to honor what's on the IEP, provide those services or comparable services, but not necessarily the same program. And again, they can conduct an evaluation to determine appropriate placement and ensure that the student is receiving the appropriate services. Of course, we always want to make sure that the students are getting the services they need. Placement flexibility. The receiving school may waive course or program prerequisites if the student has previously completed similar coursework in another local education agency. That's just another way to say school district. Waivers are not mandatory. So we allow waivers on almost all of our provisions, but they're not mandatory. However, if a school determines they're not going to give a waiver when one is eligible, they do have to show cause for why the waiver was denied. Placement flexibility. This allows students who may, we see a lot of mid-year transitions and a lot of schools have seat time requirements. And so this allows that school to maybe waive that requirement because the student was in class, but not necessarily in their school district. And so they can waive that. This also allows schools, like perhaps as a student is a senior, say you have a student who transitions mid-year, their senior year, and they need to take a state history. If they've taken a previous state history, you could waive that requirement, counting that other state's history. Now, again, that's there are nuances to every case. So I give these as very broad strokes, but the other side of that argument or that other scenario is if the student has the time in their course to take that, or the time in their schedule to take that course, they're going to be required to. The compact does not necessarily mean they're not going to have to take that course. It's a lot depends on when they transition and how much time they have to complete the requirements. Absences related to deployment activities. So this allows schools to grant additional excused absences. So a child may visit with their parent or legal guardian while that parent is home due to deployment. So let's say, you're getting back for a little time at home in between deployments or in between leaving again. This allows the school to grant additional excused absences so the child can visit with that parent. We don't give a set number of days. You're going to see we use that verbiage reasonable accommodation. If it's during state testing period, if the child is a truancy risk, if they are in danger of failing core courses, we want the schools to be able to say, hey, I understand mom or dad is back and they're visiting or getting ready to deploy and you will want to spend some time together. However, right now we can't give you 5 days off, but we can give you 3 days here and, 2 days the next week or however the school can work that out. But they do have to make some accommodation for that student. Again, that reasonable accommodation. Eligibility for enrollment. I call this the deployment provision because it does not apply to PCS or permanent change of station moves. It only applies to deployment. So a student can continue at their current school while living with a parent or with a guardian or a non-custodial parent while the service member is deployed. The school cannot charge tuition for the student living outside of the zoned school district. and transportation to and from school is going to be the guardian's responsibility. So we tend to see this whenever a National Guard member is, say they're, put onto active duty orders. And we just had a case recently where the parents were divorced. So the student was going to go live with the non-custodial parent while the service member was deployed. And then, of course, he's going to come back in 6 months and going to live back with that custodial parent. So in that situation, you don't want to have to force the student to withdraw from their current school, go to the neighboring school district, enroll, and then repeat that process in 6 months. Under this provision, as long as that guardian will drive the student back and forth to school and any extracurriculars, they can stay enrolled in their current school, and that current school cannot charge them tuition for living outside that zoned boundary. We do see families try to use this 2 different ways. And again, I think they're very legitimate ways, but they're just not covered under this provision. The first one is a family is going to PCS during their child's senior year, and say they want to leave that child behind with a family member or a guardian so that they can complete their senior year. I think that's, again, a very valid reason to want to use this provision of the compact, but unfortunately, that is not what this is intended to do. Now, can the school district make the accommodation? Absolutely, but that would be outside the compact. They would be choosing to do that on their own, of their own volition, not because we are requiring it. The other way we see this tend to be used is, let's say a family member or family has younger children, and those children are not acclimating well because of the multiple, moves. And so they want to leave them behind in a more stable home life, usually with grandparents or an aunt or an uncle, so that they aren't moving. Again, very valid reason to do what's in the best interest of your children. And the school can make the accommodation, but it is outside the compact. This is strictly for what you see there, deployments, not PCS moves. Eligibility for extracurricular participation. This deals with athletics a lot, but we'll talk about athletics right now, but please keep in mind that extracurricular includes things, any school-sponsored activity, band, debate, academic team, drama club, any of those school-sponsored activities, but we tend to get the most questions around athletics. So if a student is qualified, it ensures the opportunity. The language in the compact is actually facilitates the opportunity for the child to participate in extracurricular activities, even if deadlines, and those deadlines can be paperwork or physical tryout deadlines, have passed. The school is not required to hold open or create additional spaces for the military students, and the school must publicly post information relevant to all extracurricular activities. So the PCS season is usually over the summer. This affects cheerleading tryouts and some other, fall activities like soccer or football, some fall baseball. And so students, maybe come into the into that school district after the cheerleading tryouts have happened. And so this requires the school to allow that child to try out, even though they have missed that deadline. So just be aware, military families are getting very, very good at doing their due diligence and really trying to work within the school's time frame to accommodate their students. And so we have a lot of parents who will coordinate with the local school liaison. They know, hey, we're coming to Fort Knox. When does Elizabethtown, when do they have their cheerleading tryouts? And they'll find a way, virtually or however, to participate so that their student can already be involved before they get there. However, just know that even if this parent does not do that, the school is still required to facilitate the opportunity for that child. And then all information does have to be publicly posted where either the family or the student has access to it. So graduation requirements, this is the final provision of the compact. It does several things. It's usually applied when a student is transitioning between their junior and senior year. So the time frame for them to acquire a new state's, education requirements is very condensed. So there's several different ways that we can help those students who have that shorter time frame to accomplish those. First, courses required for graduation may be waived if similar coursework has been previously completed. So, again, we kind of talked about the history example that I gave a little earlier. This allows that student to kind of still have those graduation coursework completed because of courses they took at the previous school. The receiving school can accept extra end of course exams from sending state or national achievement tests in lieu of testing that the student didn't have to take. So The example or the way we normally see this applied is, let's say a student was a freshman in Rhode Island and took biology. And just for the sake of argument, let's say that Rhode Island did not require an end of course exam. Now they're a senior and they're graduating from a state that requires an end of course exam for biology. That receiving school can accept, ACT, SAT scores. We've seen them accept the last test score taken in that course as the end of course exam. They can also waive the requirement. There's a lot of different ways we can help students who maybe are encountering some issue with that end of course or exit exams for those courses that they weren't required to take in other states, but now they are in the receiving state. The third bullet is outside of kindergarten, athletics, and course placement. This is what we call the reciprocal diploma. It is one of our more widely used provisions. So those are the four you want to look for. This allows receipt of ascending school diploma as an alternative to accommodations for exit exams or graduation requirements that the student doesn't have time to meet. So let's say a student comes into a school and they need to take a full load and then maybe attend summer school. If the student can graduate from the sending school, so a school counselor will look at the student's transcripts and they're going to realize pretty quick this student is not going to meet our graduation requirements. But you reach back and they would have met the sending state's requirements had they stayed. So you reach back to that sending school, you arrange this reciprocal diploma with the school. We can help with that, but school liaisons do these all the time. Every graduation cycle, they're putting together these packages for reciprocal diplomas. The student gets to participate in all of the graduation activities. They get their cap and gown, they walk across the stage, mom and dad get to take their photos. But when they open their folder at the end of the evening, it's a diploma from the sending school. That's the reciprocal diploma. So this just allows that student, again, to stay on that trajectory so that they're not disadvantaged because they've transitioned between that junior and senior year. And then you see here again, we talk about waivers, not mandatory. However, if denied, you do have to show cause for the denial. And the receiving school, if denied, shall provide an alternative means for acquiring the coursework so graduation may occur on time. So what that means there, that a little additional caveat is, let's say a student comes in and they need a course. So they're a junior in their senior year and they need a course that was offered in the fall and they transitioned over, Christmas break. And so now it's the spring semester and they're not going to get the chance to take that. If you can find an alternative to accommodate that student. So let's say it's a course taken online, virtually, or maybe at the local community college. If you can still find a way to accommodate that student, you don't have to reach back for the reciprocal diploma as long as you can keep them on track, on grade level, on track to graduate. Now, every scenario we have talked about throughout this section of the training is for students who are doing their due diligence, right? They've gotten the grades, they have come to school, they have participated. We do not change, and we do have to have this conversation sometimes with parents. We don't change graduation requirements. We don't change grades. Your student earns the grades that they get the grades that they earn, I should say. And so we really, stress that to families. Like the compact is here to help the students who have done everything they could do to possibly stay on grade level on track to graduate. And these are just some extra little assistance we can give them. The case resolution process. So here at the national office, we work about 70 to 80 cases. Commissioner Snyder, did you want to say something before I moved on?
I'm going to unmute myself first. We had one question in the chat when you were talking about the placement piece. Colonel Huffstetler asked about a testing timeline for place and then test. So I think that's related to when we were talking about programs like GT, other programs that a district might historically test before they place, but with a military connected student, we flip that and we say place and then test. So the question was if there's a timeline for that testing requirement.
Yeah, and if I could add to that,
Please.
just to kind of expound on it. So most of the military families, well, not most, but a heavy percentage of military families are PCSing in the summertime, or they're trying to align their moves with the summertime, and so the student would be, departing out of a school where they were previously placed and then moving to somewhere in August timeframe. And I've seen it in more than one occasion where that school, even if they place, still wants to test at the end of the summer, when would be the absolute worst time to do the testing. So I'm just trying to discern if there's any language or policy or guidelines for those schools to actually place and allow the student to execute for the year and then test at the end of the year, or if they actually have to test upon showing up right after a PCS move.
So as far as the compact is concerned, there is no time frame for the testing. As long as they place the student and allow the student to participate in the courses or the educational program, they can test whenever they are testing. And honestly, we usually see it where a family, where the school like wants to test before they place. So we don't run into very many instances where it's more of a, we want to test at the end. It's usually that the school wants to wait to test. So I haven't run into that so often, but no, there's no requirement as far as the timeline or the time frame under the compact. Now, states may have some, and so I would refer to Commissioner Snyder on if there's some type of requirement in Texas, but not under the compact. She's shaking her head. No.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's helpful. I think
for special education, there might be timelines that need to be reviewed and considered, but in general, just broadly, no, at the state level, we don't have.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think the my wife is a special educator, and so I understand the uniqueness of that. Students are at an extreme disadvantage to move PCS, which is equivalent to having a death in the family. And then when they show up at their next place, even if they are placed and it shows up on their schedule, if they're required to test upon arrival, that's a really difficult situation. So I think from an advocacy standpoint, my hope is that the students would be allowed to be placed, and then at the end of the year, if they don't test into that for a follow-on year, that would make sense to me. Thanks.
Did I miss anything else on anybody?
No, thank you.
Right. Sorry, I can't read and speak at the same time. And no jokes about Kentucky. I think that's normal for everybody. I think that's because I'm from Kentucky. Now I've lost my cursor again. Hold on. So at the national office, we do work around 70 to 80 cases per year. We get called from school districts, we get calls from families, we get calls from school liaisons, we get calls from compact commissioners. And so we work really hard on those to resolve them at the local level. Most effective, efficient outcome for the student. Our focus is the student. We really know there's a child somewhere that's waiting on this decision, either to have to retake a course or to get into a course. And so we don't want to belabor it. We want to really address it at the local level. So we always ask families, especially, have you talked to the teacher, the principal, the superintendent? We want to ensure that everybody is aware there's a situation and has had the opportunity to address it, right? Because the worst thing is whenever you call someone and they're not aware that there was even a situation. So we always make sure everyone is looped in. At that point, if the family feels like we've tried to address it, but unfortunately, we're still struggling, maybe it's a communication, that's not a problem. Then what we do is we loop in the school liaison and then the compact commissioner. And at that point, we're on the emails. Usually we just are there as a support if anyone has any questions, but we really do allow them to discuss it at the local level to work it out for the student. And 90% of the cases are resolved by the school liaison and the compact commissioner. They never come back to the national office. On those rare occasions where a commissioner will contact us and say, do you remember the Smith family that you referred us to? We've spoken to the school, and unfortunately, we need some help. Maybe we're not communicating effectively. So at that point, when we are invited in by the compact commissioner, we will have a discussion with the school. Again, we always do it under the, education and information, because we want it to be productive. We want them to understand what the law says and what they're required to do. If at that point it is covered by the compact and the school is refusing to make the accommodation, then we do keep general counsel on retainer that we can have contact the school. Usually it's the attorney there within the school system to have that conversation on more of a legal level of what's required for that student. I've been with the organization now. I'm in my 8th year. Actually, I guess in a few months I'll start my 9th year. And that's only happened twice. So it's very rare that we get to that point, because again, we are very focused on working these out quickly for the student. And so we're always focused on that, but it does happen. And we do have general counsel should we need to address those issues. So what do you do now that we've gone through all of this? Just our website, mic3.net, is a wonderful resource. There is a whole page dedicated to schools and a page dedicated to parents. Of course, our interactive map is on there. So I always tell people, if you haven't bookmarked it, please do. We constantly update that. We're on it every day. But we also have some really great materials, informational materials for schools and the military, for the school liaisons to give out to their families. So the first one that I'll point out is you may see this little, it's like a little kind of picture in the middle with school with kids running across it. That's our guide for parents, school officials, and public administrators. This is everything we have learned today or kind of talked about today in this session in a very condensed layman's terms booklet. And so it goes through everything. It gives contact information for the national office. It's a wonderful resource for registrars, for guidance counselors or school counselors. It's a great resource for school liaisons to have, or for, senior spouses whenever they have their meetings. Sometimes we'll brief to them. You can order any of this stuff off our website. We provide everything at no cost to the requesting party. So everything we provide is paid by the state dues that support the commission. So we don't charge for anything. That's the great news, is that you can order these hard copies off our website. They're also digital downloads. That guide for parents, school officials, and public administrators is in English and Spanish. We have 2 items that we've translated. That and the brochure are both available in Spanish as well. But we've got some great one-pagers, and I know Texas Education Agency also took a one-pager, and they have a great one-pager with compact information on one side, and I believe the Texas information on the other. So there are also state-specific resources that you can find. We, of course, have stuff for Month of the Military Child, which comes up in April every year, and that we refresh that and send it out every January, so that'll be coming out soon. And then we have our resource toolkits that is basically everything you need to know about the compact and all the different links on our website, so that you have that information at your fingertips in one single document. And then we do provide training on the compact. We provide it virtually, like today. We provide it in person. Again, that is no cost. We bring all the materials. We'll arrange those for the school district or for any stakeholder group that wants that information. We also have mic3training.net, which is our online portal that our training committee just recently launched, which Commissioner Snyder is a part of that training committee. This is everything. It's 10 modules. You can take it at your own pace. You just sign up, you create a user profile, again, no cost to do this. And you can go through everything a little bit more in depth than we've done it today, obviously. And it does offer a certificate of completion at the end. So for schools, I always recommend that if they can't come to one of our monthly virtual 101 training sessions that we provide on our events calendar, then this is another way to get the information, at their own leisure as they can take it. And so that's a great course. And anytime we provide training, we do provide that certificate of completion. So if a school needs professional development hours, we can definitely arrange that. And some of the school liaisons, I think last year, and I'm going to say this Air Force Base wrong, so I'm going to apologize up front. DYESS, DYESS. You think I was there for 3 days. You think I would have finally learned how to say it, but I don't do well at it. Anyway, we provided in-person training, and a lot of schools allowed us to come in and do professional development. So that's definitely something that, we concentrate on, especially to ensure that schools understand the compact and the legal provisions that are afforded to those military-connected students. And then finally, you can always contact us at mic3.net, our email, our general info, mic3info@csg.org, or on our telephone number. You're welcome to reach out to us. But I would say that if you have questions, if you know your school liaison, reach out to them. But definitely Commissioner Snyder is your point of contact there within Texas and can answer any questions you might have. And any recent resources that you or the council determine you might need, Commissioner Snyder, you can always request those through the national office as well. We're here to support your all's efforts. But I will stop there and yield the floor back to you, Commissioner Snyder.
Thank you, Lindsay. Do we have any other questions from council members for Lindsay? So one thing I wanted to mention, the trainings that Lindsay provides, I think there are a couple of opportunities here. In one of I mentioned we were at the annual business meeting just last week, and one of the things we talked about in the number of resources that are available on the MIC3 website is we have the water, the resources, and we have the horse, which are our school, our LEAs, our schools, our parents, and how do we get them get that horse to the water? And I think that is a potential space for the council where we come in and creating and establishing these networks that we can ensure that that both our school systems as well as our stakeholders and our parents and our students are aware of the provisions and the resources available through the compact. And so that is, I think, what we'll be talking about in the second part of our meeting. Lindsay, anything else you would like to put on the radar of this group or share with us before we conclude this piece?
No, I appreciate the opportunity today. I think Commissioner Snyder mentioned our annual business meeting. We had a great panel of Bloom teens that spoke, and really what they said was, they're 17 years old or 18 years old, and they said, we along the way, now that they know about the compact, they had found different instances throughout their mini PCS moves where the compact would have helped them, but they didn't know about it, and the schools they were transitioning into didn't know about it. And so you don't know what you don't know, but definitely to Commissioner Snyder's point, if there is a way that we can assist your all's efforts in getting the information out to the parties who need it, please let us know. That's why we exist, and we're happy to do that. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Folks, we actually have kind of another detailed item after this item. And so I'd like to give folks just a 5-minute break before we pick up our business. So you're welcome to go off camera and mute yourselves if you're not already, and we will reconvene at 2:15. We do expect to go till 3 today. So if you want to take a 5-minute break, we will resume at 2:15. Thank you. I know that was a very short break, but I just wanted to give folks an opportunity to pause for a moment if they needed before we continue with the second part of our agenda. We'll give folks just a little bit of time to make their way back to their computers. While I do that, I need to extend a technical difficulty. I recognize we have attendees who are not council members. So they're not panelists. Unfortunately, we don't have a mechanism set up that we can view or see any comments that are submitted. That is something I will work on and provide some more guidance or instructions if needed for our next meeting. But wanted to let our attendees know if there is a question or comment that you would like to share, please send that to me via email, and then we'll find out a way between now and the next meeting to make sure that we are able to view those comments. But at this point in time, we're not able to do so. Right, I am going to kind of transition us as folks make their way back to their computer. If council members can either turn on their cameras or send a message to let me know that you have rejoined us, that would be helpful. Where we're headed next is revisiting the conversation from a previous meeting related to our council priorities. Specifically, starting with just the role of the State Advisory Council. This is pulled from a previous slide from a previous session. Our role as the State Advisory Council on Educational Opportunity for Military Children is to assist in the dissemination of information regarding the compact, assisting in the identification of topics and issues of interest to military-connected parents and students, and then to assist in that identification of topics of issues of interest for districts and schools that serve military-connected students. So that is both identifying those issues that come up and matter the most, both for our parents and students, as well as for our school districts, our LEAs. Number 4, we advise the Commissioner of Education, on topics of interest to military families. And we advise TEA regarding dispute resolution issues related to the military compact. Those 5 areas are the ones I think where our priorities that we focus on in the year ahead and in coming years really focus. The last 3 are kind of more logistical, that we convene once a quarter, abide by the Texas Open Meetings Act, and establish policies and procedures governing the operation of the State Council. I don't think I have the slide here, or maybe it was animation. Let's see if it comes up. It does not. There we go. I think we have accomplished compliance with 6, 7, and 8. But what I am really hoping for the year ahead with the council is to start to identify the different ways that we would like to focus on the dissemination of information and support that we provide to our students, our parents, and to our schools. On that note, we started that conversation earlier this year, but in April and in July, the council discussed continuing its effort to promote understanding awareness of the provisions of the compact. So essentially, when we started talking about where we might want to focus in the coming year, the council member started with saying, we just need to keep doing the things that we're doing. People need to know that the compact exists. We are still at a foundational level with a state as large as Texas of ensuring that there's awareness of the compact. But the council did identify some areas of focus for the coming year. The first is increasing communication with districts with lower numbers of military-connected families that have limited awareness of the compact. So we know that our school districts that are on base or near bases have a lot of support from the state liaison officers that are there. And our state liaison officers extend their support across the regions and areas but there are still pockets, and some of them are large pockets, that are less connected geographically to our bases, but that we still have students who meet that definition of military connected, who may be under the provisions of the compact, but not have the same level of communication and resources and support as students who are near to bases. And so the council felt that increasing communication with these districts so that we can ensure that their support for students, regardless of where they live in the state, that they receive the support that they need and deserve. The second was reviewing cases of issues military-connected students experience. So this was a conversation about the application of the compact would be beneficial for the field, but also for the council. As Lindsay was going through the provisions of the compact, some of it seems really straightforward, but as I'm sure our attendees know, and council members to a certain extent, depending on your direct interaction with students and school districts, it's not always black and white and cut and dry. It's complicated. And so how to apply the compact in those, when there are those areas of gray, really, I think the case studies, the actual case studies of what the issue was, the resolution and the process of getting to that resolution is where the compact really comes to life. And we really learn about how to apply those specific provisions to specific scenarios. The council also discussed promoting the criteria for Purple Star campuses. I believe it was Dr. Kraft who brought this up. Purple Star campuses are not actually a part of the military interstate compact, but they certainly represent a selection of school districts that are upholding the compact and providing resources and support to military connected students. And so what are those campuses doing right that that criteria across the state, Purple Star or not, we want to ensure that some of those best practices are being implemented across the state. And then while they're being implemented, the next step may be that Purple Star application. But having something, that awareness of best practices and promotion of best practices for all campuses in our state was suggested as an area that we focus on. Then there's also reinforcing the council's connections with school liaison officers. And we have some ideas about how to do that I'll talk about in just a bit. And then finally, we also addressed a priority for this year in filling vacancies on the council. And we discussed a little bit earlier some progress we've made as well as some next steps to ensure that we are fully staffed, if you will. So I had a conversation with Dr. Lay about, we decided that in laying out some of these priorities and works that it would be helpful to have some documentation of the conversations and decisions that the council makes. And so Dr. Lay helped, or I shouldn't say helped me create, Dr. Lay created a visual organizer for us in some ways that we can think about the priorities that the council addressed. So as a first step, she created this document. On the left side is our membership, a link to our TEA webpage. You can see on the far left column, we have the different positions that we hold, starting with the Texas Commissioner, our superintendent representatives. We have a designee of the governor. The grayed out boxes show our vacancies. The orange represent direct school employees, such as school district representatives, a school council representative, a district level representative. And then on the right side at the bottom quadrant there, you can see there is a representative from each branch of the U.S. Armed Services, and we've identified the branches that we have represented on our council. They're in green. Then we started so that represents who we are, the body, the entity that sets these priorities. And so as we talked about having a plan or documentation of the priority plan, we really identified, looking at the list that we just looked at, that there were three buckets or categories. The first is stakeholder engagement and outreach. The second, training opportunities and resource dissemination. And then the third is strategic partnerships and leadership engagement. And then as the next step, we took the list of priorities that the council talked about in its last meeting and have assigned them to one of those categories of work. So in stakeholder engagement, is where we plugged in that increased communication with districts with that lower military connected student enrollment. Because that's essentially some outreach. And those are our stakeholders, the schools and the students, and outreach to increase that communication. And the training opportunities and resources, this is where, and training opportunity and resources where we really focus on the training, the tools, and equipping our stakeholders and staff with the resources that they need to promote these priorities for military connected student support. So this is where we plugged the reviewing of case studies. That is essentially can be a training or informational piece. Also that criteria for the Purple Star campuses and those best practices. So distributing those, there are training opportunities that both of those offer, as well as potentially the production of a resource that can be shared or distributed. And then in the last column, we've got strategic partnership and leadership. This is cultivating the partnerships and the relationships to promote the compact and the council's priorities. And so we identified there that reinforcing the connections with the state liaison officers, they are important partners in this work, as well as filling our vacant council positions, which is our leadership. And so this was really just in starting that these are three, again, like categories of types of priorities that we can have: stakeholder engagement, training and resources dissemination, and then those strategic partnerships. And each of the priorities that the council discussed in these previous meetings we thought fit in one of these areas. Before I move on, I wanted to kind of pause and give folks, the council members, a moment to look at these categories and where we placed the priorities that the group discussed, and see have we put things in the right place? Does this make sense? Or if there's anything you would move or define differently than than how we've defined it or where we've placed it here.
This is Simone. I don't know why, but I'm having issues with my microphone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I really love this visual. It makes it easier to understand where we're going. So I think it's great, and I don't have any suggestions for, making it better, but I do like it. It makes it easy to understand where we are and where we want to go.
Thank you, Simone.
And Commissioner, I just have one question. Does TEA have a list of Purple Star campuses that can be provided to us?
We do. Dr. Lay, do you want to address that question?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Brenda, we have a Purple Star campus designation webpage, and it has all the required components on there. So I will send that into the chat for you, and there you'll see the list for the last 6 years.
Excellent, thank you.
So really this first graphic that I'm sharing with you is just a way to think about the different categories or types of priorities that the council may identify. And it really is just to start a visualization, one, to list these priorities, and then to kind of assign them, and like how we might have, I think that bucket or that category also helps how we might think about or work on that particular priority. This is outreach. This is a tool that we need to develop. These are partnerships that we need to foster and cultivate. And so this is just kind of the starting of helping us to organize, visualize, and document the discussions and the priorities that the council has discussed. But we'd like to take it one step further. And so I'm going to I don't know if I'm going to stop sharing my screen or pull something over. We'll see how this works. I want to bring an Excel document into the mix. But actually, before I do that, I wanted to remind the council that when we have an action item, such as that requires a formal vote, like the operating procedure that I mentioned that I'll bring back, that is something that we need to identify in our agenda and ensure that we have a quorum for. We as a council can also have discussions. And if there's general consensus about doing a thing or moving in a particular direction, that's something that we can just discuss. And if there aren't any objections, we can decide we want to move forward with that. And so here, I think I might just ask, in general, if there are any objections to using this framework to help us organize as a way to think about and organize our priorities moving forward. Any objections? Okay, then I think we can continue and to use, if we add to or tweak or refine, we can bring this up as just kind of a grounding document for us. We can also open it up for discussion. Today, it's really just to pull in what the committee has already discussed so far. I will provide opportunities in the future if there are things we want to add to, and we might want to do that on a schedule. So that's going to kind of segue me to the next document. I think I can just pull this over, but nope. Whoop, there we go. Okay, are you able to see a spreadsheet? I want to make sure it's covering. I see Jeanette nodding. You should see it. Let me bump it up a notch. So for some reason it's not letting me increase the size. Are you able to, I can try something else. Jeanette, are you able to see and read? Is it large enough that you can read what's on it?
It's not that large. I can see the words, but yeah, it might need to be zoomed in.
Yeah, it is. I'm not seeing the zoom. Yeah, I think I'm gonna, here we go. Okay. So this next tool would provide an additional layer of accountability and organization to the priorities. I've labeled it as a planning document. So what I've done is taken in and placed the priorities that the council has identified. And I would say that I think a priority with a verb is a goal. It is an action that you would pursue. And so I've identified them as goals and broken them into two types of goals. There are cultural goals. Cultural goals are goals that impact our families, our communities, and our military culture. And then structural goals. They're on row 7. Structural goals focus on organization, processes, frameworks of a system. They might take a policy or legislature or memorandum of understanding in order to enact, but they're more systems and process oriented. So I've taken the priorities and goals that the council identified in the previous discussion, placed them here. I've pulled over the priority plan category and started to lay out some action steps that I'd like to look at with the council today. And we don't have to dig all the way into this document and make decisions today. What I'm bringing to you today is just a tool, a planning document that the council can use, again, to document, ensure we have some accountability for the things that we say that we're going to do, and have a way to document progress and decisions that are made. So if you start with the cultural goals section, that's where we have the reinforcing connections with school liaison officers, promoting the criteria for Purple Star campuses, and increasing outreach to school districts and personnel with those low numbers of military connected students. I've also included in that first column, if it seems like this is something the council could do on the short term, if it would be more of a midterm goal, or if it's something that would take a longer, more trajectory to consider it as been accomplished or to make significant progress in. So starting with reinforcing the connections with school liaison officers, I identified that came from our strategic partnership and leadership priority. Action steps. One of the things that I was talking to at the annual business meeting, some of the other commissioners, is that they include what one commissioner called an SLO, or a school liaison officer spotlight, that they include in their agenda meetings an opportunity for school liaison officers to attend. Now, some of the other states are not as large as Texas, and so that might be one or two. So it's always the same person. That might be something that we could do on a rotating basis. And so I included that as a potential action step. What I would like to do is potentially bring this back for approval, give folks an opportunity to look at and bring back for approval, since these action steps are ones that I identified. We could add to it, or you could change it or revise it. I don't want the council to think you're stuck with these. This was just me showing how this tool might work and laying out some ideas about how you might want to take on approach each of these goals. So that was an idea that I added here as an example for you. I also listed for myself, because I recently received an invitation from Simone to attend one of the SLO quarterly meetings. That would also fall under the goal of reinforcing connections with school liaison officers. So while that might be a broader, longer term goal, there are a couple of really short-term simple things that we could add and integrate to strengthen that strategic partnership. So that's just an example of how, going across that first row, of how we might use a planning document like this to, again, identify the priority, set somewhat of a timeline for it, and some action steps to go along with it. So I'm just going to kind of go through the rest of this relatively quickly, again, giving council members an opportunity, excuse me, to review this document and approve it at your next meeting. In terms of the criteria for Purple Star campuses, this is a training opportunity and resource dissemination topic. There are lots of resources that Dr. Lay is going to review in her update next, that are available, that we just need to direct people to. But it could be something that we add to future council agenda if we want to. First, like, what are those criteria? Do we as a council want to familiarize ourselves with them? That's all I had placed for action items. There may be other things that the council wants to include there as potential action steps. And then the third thing, outreach to school districts and personnel with lower numbers of military connected students. This is a stakeholder engagement and outreach opportunity. We need to reach out to these districts. As a potential action step, I identified here, we may need to collect and review military connected student data that is reported to the agency to find where these students are. And then once we know where they are, then we can perhaps address a more targeted approach to reaching some of those schools. And I think we always think of like outliers when we think of districts with limited information. We think of, I know I have a habit of thinking of like small schools or rural schools. That is not the case when we're talking about low numbers of military connected students. I had a case referred to me that was in a large metropolitan area that had few numbers of military, one of our highest enrollments districts in the state, but had a relatively low number of military connected students. And so this is not necessarily just, a small school problem. In some ways, it's even more so a large school program where our kids might be getting lost in large enrollment districts. And so just moving to structural goals, again, this is just a walkthrough, kind of a preview, not one, it didn't make the priority slide, but we talked about establishing some form of a communication plan that was maintaining the things that the council is already doing. What are some of the communications that are already in place that we want to reinforce and ensure that we're carrying through? And so I identified that as that we put that in the stakeholder engagement and outreach bucket. And an action step would be identifying what are some of the key events and types of mechanisms for communication. And I'll show you a tab just briefly of where we can lay out some of those steps in the communication plan. Reviewing case studies. That's a training opportunity, and it could pair nicely with including a state liaison officer spotlight into meetings. If we want to incorporate that into the agenda, that would be a great opportunity for this school liaison officer could bring in A case study, it wouldn't always have to be a case study every meeting. That's something we could work with Simone, who participates in those meetings. We could kind of task that group with identifying what they think would be the most helpful or useful update if there's a spotlight part of the agenda. But I think case studies this would be an opportunity to bring those case studies into the meeting. And those are the folks who deal with the highest number of cases. Every now and then there may be one that comes to the state level or national level, though that might be helpful to share out as well. And then the last, fully staff the council. We've talked about that earlier. We've identified the current vacancies, and we've already started a bit of a plan about how we are going to approach each of those. So again, it's just some documentation for accountability, organization, and I think once with this document, we can talk about, is it something we might want to look at every meeting? Is it something that we just want to bring at the beginning and the end of the year? But it helps me to visualize and see the things that the council is committed to doing and ensuring that we're making some progress. The columns we didn't talk about are results. That's where and status. I think that is something that we can plan and mark as things that are done and complete, things that are ongoing. And then the council can also talk about it's complete, but we want to continue doing this thing, or if it's something that can fall off because you feel like you've accomplished that goal and are ready to identify a new goal in its place. Next, I won't go into a lot of detail here, but the council discussed having a communication plan of the different notices that come out. So this is something I'd like to look at with the council at a future meeting. What are some of the things that you would like to communicate to the field just to get us started? I've plugged in our State Advisory Council meetings. There is an open meeting notice that comes out, but there may be other types of communication that can help promote the meetings so that the field is aware and feels invited to participate or to view the proceedings. Let me go through the columns here. That's month. If it is just a month-long commemorative month that we might want to celebrate, it's identified by month. If it is a date-specific action, I've identified that. And then the event and topic. And just going through them briefly, as I mentioned, our advisory council meetings, National Military Family Month, which Dr. Lay is going to talk about next. We Purple Up, Month of the Military Child. And so this is just a basic list that we can go through and refine. But I think the other important thing is if you use this as a standing item in the agenda is you're looking forward and making plans for that next event. The National Military Family Month is already upon us, and Dr. Lay's office has already been doing some outreach and events around this topic. So I don't think there's anything that council needs to do this quickly. But in our January meeting, looking ahead, April is the month of the military child. Lindsay mentioned that there is a month of the military child toolkit. So that's something that we can pull out and look at. So what I'm suggesting is using the communication plan as a standing item in future meetings so that we can look ahead and see what might need to be communicated and have a plan in place for how and what the council would like to do around those events that are happening between quarters. So I think we've got not so much happening that we need to take on or just with short notice worry about taking on at this meeting. But in our January meeting, might want to look ahead and make some plans for what communications the council might want to put out as a part of its outreach and engagement for other upcoming events. There are a place for other topics where the council can brainstorm what other events they might want to add. And then what some of the different types of communication and mechanisms that are available to the council that could plug in and how you would want to communicate. What mechanisms do we have that exist that you would like to use for those communications? And there may be things to add there as well. The last thing that I want to show you is in the planning document is how we want to handle our agendas. We have a list of existing items, things that we always do: roll call, public comments, council priorities. And then I've also got whether columns to identify the frequency and the timing of those events. Is it an agenda item that you want to take up at every meeting? Is it an agenda item that you that has a particular month? For example, Military Child Month, planning in January because it's in April, and then acknowledging in some way in your April meeting. So that might just be 2 meetings. But you have other items. I mean, you're kind of stuck with roll call and public comments for all meetings. Do you want to discuss your council priorities at every meeting? So I've just shown you the document we can use to document those priorities and identify action steps. Do you want to set goals in October and review in your previous meeting's progress, or identify new action steps? So again, these are some decisions I'm going to be asking the council to make, but I think kind of laying out this infrastructure in advance will be helpful in the coming year for going back to, if you remember, the role of the council, those first 5 steps, how you want to make progress towards those other pieces of our role beyond just meeting 4 times a year. There's some new items that I'd like for the council to discuss and approve. One, we have not been doing approval of minutes, which is a fairly common item in other state groups. And so we may want to integrate an approval of the minutes at the top of our meetings. The communication plan might be something that we, again, look at each meeting, looking ahead. What are the things we may not want to communicate? So adding that as an agenda item. The end of the year report that we turn into MIC3. Seems like that's something that the council should review together before we turn into MIC3. And so that could be a July meeting. And then, as I mentioned, the spotlight, that was an idea of an action item. So I'd like the council to discuss at our next meeting. Do we want to add that? Is that every meeting? Is it what cadence you would like for that? So laying out for you some decisions that I'm going to be asking you to make with me in January. And there might be some other opportunities for training. You don't need to train every meeting. Maybe it's not every year. Maybe it's every other year. Would like some feedback especially from folks who are here today, about what cadence you think it would be helpful to hear from the national headquarters. And Lindsay's been developing some new training, so it wouldn't have to be the same training over again. That was 101 she did this afternoon. There's a 201, so we could discuss bringing some other trainings in. So that was a lot of information. I went through it really quickly. I wanted to share this planning document with you. So you would have an opportunity to preview it. I will share it with you in between meetings. And then when we come back in January, we'd like to take a little bit more time looking at plans, identifying some action steps, and making some decisions so we can use this document to, again, help plan and organize our work in the coming year. Questions or comments about the planning document? All right. Well, you've got some homework between now and the next meeting, which is really just to take a look and come to the January meeting prepared to discuss and offer suggestions for action steps, as well as making some decisions about our agenda items on this tab here. There is a Commissioner Priorities tab, which is some priorities I'm setting for myself that I will share with you at a future meeting. With that, I'm going to keep rolling rather quickly. I'm going to transition things over to Dr. Lay, whose department has been very busy with some stakeholder engagement with really probably all 3 buckets of work. Give me just a moment, Dr. Lay, to get your slide up. And I will turn things over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. So thank you for this opportunity to share updates with our TEA Military Connected Students programs. As we continue our work with military connected stakeholders, our focus remains on aligning compliance and programmatic efforts to ensure unified, meaningful support for our military connected students across Texas. If you go on to the next slide, okay. Our goal is to highlight 3 key areas today. So the first one is professional development and capacity building events that we've completed. Our second one is newly released resources to support both military and educational stakeholders. And lastly, reminders about upcoming professional development opportunities. Each of these updates align with our council's priorities and supports military connected student work stream as outlined in our TEA charter. So it does reinforce our shared commitment to coordinated, impactful support. On the next slide. Since our last update in July's council meeting, we've completed 5 key professional development opportunities. These include foundational training on supporting military children through school transitions. We had 2 professional learning communities, a professional development and office hours that are combined, and then a training and resource development day for our regional education service center military champions. And these champions are voluntarily designated at each of our educational service centers, so 20 across the state of Texas. And we also participated in MSEC's Global Training Summit that was held in Austin. And each of these events helped us to build that capacity across the region and deepen our collective impact. So on this next slide here, if you click on it, Texas is home to 20 education service center. Jessica, if you can click one more time, it'll show a map of, there we go. Okay, it'll show a map. This is the map of all of our 20 education service center regions across Texas. And I'm proud to share that each region now has a designated military connected ESC champion who also knows who their military school liaisons or school liaison officers are. So they're going to be coordinating with our installation and also school districts to help bridge that gap of awareness and knowledge and support for our military connected students. These champions are part of a newly formed voluntary network dedicated to advancing support for military connected students statewide. And so with that, in partnership with our Military Child Education Coalition, we hosted a powerful global training summit, and it was preceded by a specialized pre-conference day for our ESC champions. And so I wanted to highlight the summit because we had some inspiring addresses by Commissioner Mike Morath and Major General Larry Broadwell. So on the next slide, this will give you a shot of our ESC military champions. They represent our military support regionally, and it's also followed by our partners with MSEC and our TEA program staff members. On our next slide here, very excited, we unveiled a new 4-part micro video. These short, impactful videos are designed for both educators and families, and they offer practical strategies to support better understanding and just services to military connected children in schools. These series covers topics including military culture and lifestyles, supporting families relocating to Texas, addressing the needs of military connected students with exceptionalities or special needs, and fostering emotional awareness through strong school community partnerships. And each 4 of these have one version for educators and one version for families. And the QR code actually leads you to where you can view those videos today. And just like Commissioner had said, our National Veterans and Military Families Appreciation Month toolkit is available. So we wanted to help schools and communities across Texas in honoring our military connected students and families during the month of appreciation. So we're excited to unveil this new resource. It was developed in partnership with our grantee, and it is providing ready-to-use materials and ideas for schools and educators to recognize service, sacrifice, and strength for our nation's veterans and families. And it's another way that we're supporting campuses in creating inclusive, affirming environments for military connected students. So that QR code actually leads you to the toolkit, and we already know that schools are planning on using this. So it's been we've gotten some very good feedback from this development. And this is something that we're going to look forward to in month of Military Child. We will have a toolkit for month of Military Child as well.
Dr.
And
Lay, if I could
yes,
jump in, I know we're getting close to time, and I realize
yes.
I have overplanned ourselves for this meeting, so I think it was rather
Okay.
ambitious to roll out the planning tool and have a training. So I think one thing that we can do is bring back some of these pieces, particularly the videos that you mentioned in January, because so much of the pieces in the priority planning document really align with some of the activities that are already happening and with the military champions. Like they're one of those potential communication mechanism levers that we can use. So how we can integrate both the council's priorities plus the activities from your office, I think is a real opportunity. Just on the toolkit, I'm wondering if there are any other that the council or the curriculum division, your partner here at TEA, can help with pushing out this resource.
Really, it's just really about promoting it. What we've been doing is sharing with our ESC champions that if they can just spread the news that this toolkit is here, and it's very self-explanatory. There's instruction pages that will tell them how to use it, and so it's just really promoting it through the avenues that you are able to.
Great. Well, I do think there will be an opportunity as we do some planning and look at the communication in January, as you said, for the month of the military child, that we can think a little bit more about what other communication streams that we have that we might be able to help promote the toolkit that your team has developed. Thank you.
And this is actually the last slide. These are some upcoming professional development and capacity building events that are available. We have a specific college-bound financial aid and college preparation for military families. And because this is geared for families, we are making it during the evening so that families are able to access it after work time. And then we also have a professional learning community based on developing a Purple Star Advisory Committee. And this is just a team of support that can help support school staff members and military connected students. And then lastly, we have our upcoming Military Connected Student Support Summit in January, and this will be in San Antonio, and it's open for all military stakeholders. And so we do have Lindsay, who will be presenting on MIC3, and hopefully Commissioner will as well. We have our TEA and our ESC staff members, and then we're hoping to have a student panel as well for our professional development. And that's it.
And then using this link in this QR code, Dr. Lay, council members would be on the webpage, will be able to see any of the professional development opportunities and the presentation. So this is the link. We will share in our follow-up communication this actual slide deck, as well as the planning document to prepare for the next meeting. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing there since we're just about at time. I do want to forward ahead to a reminder about the next our next council meeting. So give me just a moment to share that visual with you. Our next meeting, and please note this was a revised date from what was initially discussed. We will not be meeting on MLK Day. We will be meeting on January the 12th, a little earlier in the month. Apologies for that oversight. And prior to that meeting, we'll send out the agenda item. Again, anticipate we'll be bringing back the planning tool, looking at the communication plan and future meeting agenda to take on how we want to structure and take on some of the priorities that the council has identified for this year. You'll receive a tentative agenda 3 to 4 weeks before the meeting. That will include your general audience list as well as your stakeholder list, and an opportunity for you to submit any additional items if you would like to submit an agenda ad hoc item. And then the week before the meeting, we'll send you a reminder again with your panelist link and that general link. So we'll go ahead and meet, as said we would go to 3 today, and oops, I'm sorry, I did not click the final share button here. Give me just a second, just so you can see what I was talking about. So there you go. There's that date, January 12th. Please mark your calendars. We will, again, send out in advance, but go ahead and save the date for us now. We have a tentative agenda. We'll talk about the membership update, our priorities update, which will include the planning document I just referred to. We'll have that planning session on how to promote the month of the military child. And then again, you have an opportunity to submit any additional items. We are right at 3 o'clock, and so I will move us to our adjourn slide. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We look forward to seeing you in January. If you have any questions between now and then, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know. Thank you and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The training was great.
Thanks so much. Looking forward to working with you, Brenda.
Mhm.